All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our last day of class. As before I get started, I just want to say it was a pleasure getting to work with all of you. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you through my next 3 courses in this program. So, I'm looking forward to what next semester is going to bring after my break. I'm not looking forward to it until then. But today I want to talk about something that's just kind of important to me, diversity and inclusion. So I'll be talking about workplace diversity and inclusion and when does it thrive and work. And I have to stand back here because there's no clicker. All right. So after doing some research, I found out that the secret is out, that most diversity and inclusion training programs are ineffective. And they are ineffective in the sense that oftentimes they focus on the differences between people, which can make it challenging for people to absorb that information because now you're telling me why I'm not like someone, why we can't get along, why this is not going to work, right? And so then it increases people's resistance to wanting to change or engage or even participate with people who are different from them. And then, of course, it's going to have an impact on your workplace relationships and productivity when people are not connected, not operating together, and not willing to work together. All right, so I'm going to talk briefly about 3 diversity and inclusion incentives that can work in the workplace. I'm not saying this is foolproof. Don't say Deandra said this is going to work. If it's not working, it's you, not me, right? These are just some steps that can be helpful and useful within the workplace. So number 1, overcoming discomfort and facilitate effective interactions between diverse workers. 2, I'm going to talk about the benefits of social bonding outside of the workplace and incorporate novel viewpoints into your own perspective to increase creative thinking. So 1. So the idea around this first part is that after work working a little bit of it. What I'm trying to say is get rid of this because I can talk better without it. So basically the first step includes discomfort and facilitating effective interactions. So how is that done? The most effective way that's going to be done is through voluntary interactions. Who likes to be told they have to go do something and participate in the event, like something you don't want to be at or do? I don't either. So it's when you can be involved in situations where you actually want to be there. So maybe like celebrating a coworker's birthday after work or going to like a happy hour event or something like that. They also recommend that it be over long periods of time, nothing shorter than 30 minutes. So the longer you spend talking, engaging, sharing personal information, learning about the other person, the more it has the impact of creating authentic and genuine communication where people begin to feel safe and understand each other. So this can occur across several different kinds of contexts. So you can, like I said, you can do it over like a work meeting, conference calls, interacting with birthdays, happy hours. And it can also involve some sort of corporate interaction. So building teams that you have to work on a project together for, creating presentations together, organizing the workplace so that it functions better. I think last week someone or the week before talked about the functionality of an office. So rearranging the function of the office to make it fit the environment. So the benefits of social bonding outside of the workplace, well, first of all, it's fun, right? Because you don't get to talk about work. And science backs this up that when there are organized social functions for employees, people are willing to engage more. So having a game night, playing Taboo, playing Monopoly, things that are going to get people engaged and talking about themselves, sharing experiences about their lives and with other people. And so that can be done. You want to make sure that everyone is included. Don't leave out the one person in the office that nobody really likes and wants to talk to, because it could be you. So make sure that when you organize it, that everybody gets invited and everybody has an opportunity to participate in that. All right, so step 3, incorporating novel viewpoints into your own perspective to increase creative thinking. And in our training and our psychology program, this has really kind of been the foundation of what we have been taught, is what develops diversity and inclusion between people and within the context of work or just in general in relationships. And the first thing we always talk about is getting to know people other than yourself. So spending more time with people who are different than you, that have different backgrounds than you, intentionally going out and doing those things. That was actually, I think, an assignment or part of our curriculum, having to go out and make sure that we were engaging with different groups outside of our own. The second step is notice the differences between your beliefs, traditions, and experiences. Just being in this class with all of you for the last 14 weeks and seeing your presentations has taught me a lot about you, what you value, what's important to you, how these things may impact how you engage with other people. And so those are things that you take in and use them as part of your evaluation or part of your evidence as you start to conceptualize what it is you think about this person and how you'll be able to interact with them. You also want to notice, that's the differences, but I was talking about similarities, but you also want to notice the differences as well, because the way that I grew up, things we might eat, things I might say, right? If I don't know about you and your beliefs and your traditions, could be offensive. But the more I do know about you, then I have an opportunity to be sensitive to that, to be mindful of kinds of things, and open up the dialogue or a conversation that can be sensitive so that both of us can communicate effectively. And you also want to think about how the other person's life experiences may influence their behaviors and attitudes. You ever been at work and like, why does so-and-so do this all the time, right? So taking that opportunity to just take a step back and think about that person. What do I know about Susie? What do I know about John? And how might these things be impacting how they are behaving and what their attitude is, right? Instead of just kind of jumping to the conclusion that this person is not very nice, or they're not interested in participating, or they're just trying to make your life difficult. Right? And when does it thrive in work? Well, diversity and inclusion initiatives don't always work. And so that's why I stated that at the beginning. These are just ideas, they're suggestions. These are things that you can take back into your workplace. I mean, you can use them in school, you can use them at home, you can use them at work. And the key to this is just practice. The more we practice being around others who are not like us, the more we are intentional about making that effort to do so, then all of these things about changing our the way that we communicate, learning about others, changing our beliefs and how we see others' traditions and understand their viewpoints, starts to evolve the more we practice all of these incentives on a daily and consistent basis. Thank you. Yes.
I really appreciate your approach. I've both taken and developed a number of compliance courses, some of it DEI, and I always tell people the only thing worse than taking them is creating them, because it really can be boring. But I liked that approach because it felt like how people actually get to know each other naturally.
Right.
You know, you're not, there is some degree of intentionality, but as you said, you're not pushing people together. Feels like a lot of workplace DEI training consists of, here's all the things you're not allowed to do or say, and that, I didn't feel any of that in what you were talking about, so I really like the approach.
And I think in regards to what we're not allowed to do or say, well, then you're like, well, what do I do or say? Well, I'm just not going to do anything or say anything, right? Which then limits our interactions with others. They got nothing, so they're like,
oh, they're like comatose from food. All the blood just went to the stomach. No, they were focused. They're just taking it in passively. I loved it. I thought it was really great. I appreciated it, as Mark said. It didn't strike the normal chord that we often get, like with D&I stuff, where it's like, okay, the common sense, like, don't say these things. If they say this, you should respond by saying, something, right? Like the formulaic, like the videos that I have to watch, everyone has to go through this kind of stuff. And you just like click the buttons. No, I don't say that. I pay attention. I take notes, astutely observe those. I really enjoyed the perspective and the approach you took, because there's a lot of data that suggests it's a more productive path, right? That spending time is the most effective way to increase the relationship between coworkers or any group of people is to spend time together outside of the context of where you work, right? Like away from the building, out of the hours of normal working and do something together. Like you said, like some event or some team building thing, or some opportunity to engage in a way that gets past the work talk into the human being talk. And it's something that I think we've been conditioned to, as you said, to operate in a certain way and have like parameters, like blinders on, like, okay, this is my work self, right? And this is what I talk about at work. And we can't get past that. And I can't understand you because I have no idea who you are, because we both present ourselves at work as the work people, right? One thing that I think is really helpful, and this is just an aside from your presentation, and this is for everybody, when you're talking with somebody new or you're meeting someone, I know this is a little bit awkward because I've done it myself many times, but it actually makes for a much better conversation instead of saying like, what do you do for work? Because now you've like limited your conversation, right? Not everyone is really proud of what they do. So they might be reticent to say, like, I'm in between jobs right now. That nobody really wants to say that. Or they might hate their job. And now you're having a conversation with someone that just isn't excited about talking about that topic. So instead, just asking them, like, what are you really excited about these days? What are you really into right now? And you could have a much better conversation, and you can have a much more engaging and interesting, connection with someone that maybe you actually have things in common with or can relate to, as opposed to what do you do for work, right? Like it's so limiting. It's really narrow, but that's what we're conditioned to socially. So I think this like fit right into that. That's why I mention it, because it fits that kind of mentality. And I think it's much more productive. So I love that. Last thing. This is, again, another aside, because you gave a great presentation. Have you ever heard of the Heterodox Academy? Heterodoxy, or the Heterodox Academy, I think it's a really great. It's created for academics and graduate students. And I think this is kind of right into that that kind of perspective, kind of mental space. It's not just D&I kind of stuff. It's about like differences in worldview, differences in perspective, a diversity of thought, and not just physical representations we have, but like the whole experience. And like you were saying, like the dissimilarities we have, the different cultures we come from, the different life experiences and family systems that we have. And it brings that into the academic environment, into higher education, and how to institutionalize, or how to bring that into the institutions and create more diverse viewpoints. Because I don't know what your experiences have been previous to CBU or even at CBU, but they tend to be higher education and like post-secondary education tends to be quite left or liberal leaning. And there's certain narratives that take over. I'm not saying for better or for worse, it just isn't a balanced perspective of society writ large, right? It's not representative of everyone. And so you get into these silos, you get into these like very narrow worldviews or perspectives. And we don't have a fair representation across the board of diverse viewpoints, because that's not supported in academics. So it's a great organization. They have a lot of great D&I stuff as well, but I think it might be something you'd be interested in. So.
The reason I chose this topic, I can't remember the gentleman's name. He was sitting behind
Amar?
Amar. He
Yeah.
said it on his first presentation. He said that diversity without inclusion is tokenism, and I wrote that down, and I was like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to remember that. So I thought of him when I was making this presentation.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him, so.
Yeah, I haven't seen him, but I remember that too. It was really powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good job.
Hi, everybody.
It's the food coma.
Well, I be prepared to not like me. Everyone has to get up for this one.
Oh, no. No, it's great. I'm excited.
Stand up, shake it out. We'll be up and around the entire time. All right. I need one volunteer who wants to be the CEO of Candy Canes R Us. Any takers?
I don't want to take someone else's chance to do that.
Oh, Sandra.
Yeah,
Santa,
Santa,
that's perfect. All right, we got the CEO
I was
up
made
here.
for this.
You're gonna stay up here. Luckily, you have the least interactive part of this. So you just get to, you just get to be the boss here. Okay. Since we've gotten really close for this semester, so I really want to share something that's close to my heart with you really quick. I was looking for candy canes this week. I went to Target, I went to CVS, I went to Rite Aid. All they had was the Jelly Belly kind. Moment of silence, okay. I've come to find out that there is actually a candy cane shortage going on right now, which during this season seems highly inappropriate. So I thought, who better to solve this problem than my team of biopsychologists? You guys can figure it out, right?
Totally.
So in my hand, I have 8 clues. This covers a diversity of topics from the entire semester. And in order to help solve the candy cane crisis, you guys have to answer the questions in these clue folders. But there's a further twist. Here, I'm just gonna give you 2 off the top here.
I'm so excited.
The way I divided this up is that each department in your organization gets 2 clues. You guys, back rows department. And to promote interdepartmental communication, the clues that you have can only be answered and asked by the department that holds that clue. The one who provides the answer to the CEO, who will give me a full workup of her solution to the problem by the end of your time limit, which is 10 minutes. Thank you to that time limit. You guys can only give those answers by your department. You can work as an entire team, but it better come from your department. You need to figure out who in this room has the answers and talents you need. Figure out who remembered that thing from week 1 that I threw in there just to bust your brains open a little bit. Do you guys have any questions? I'm putting the fate of my need for candy canes in your hands. Go ahead.
To clarify, after we found the clues in our department,
Mhm.
we tell it to.
Yes. Okay. But one last thing, there is an order to this. So you have to answer them in order. And the only way to find that is to communicate clearly. If you guys are all the juggly of all sorts of noise, you're not gonna be able to know which one's 1, 2, or 3. The numbers are on the backs of the clues. You can answer them before that, but they do need to happen in order. The CEO can only answer them to me in order.
In order.
In order.
So we have to give them to Marina in order.
In order.
No, Santa.
Oh, yes. Santa runs
Santa.
Candy Canes R Us, so
Got it.
refer to her as Santa.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, based on what they give you, you're informed like the full answer to the candy cane crisis. You have to remember what they say.
And what biopsychologists use to help them with their candy cane shortage, but they may need some reassurance. Where's one potential remedy to the lack
Like, I
of
want to turn that after you.
general non-candy cane related issues?
Yeah. Well, hopefully, being the CEO will like burn off some like stress.
Oh, yeah.
I like the
So.
True story.
about, like, how you-
The candy canes really are worth the flavor now. Yeah, actually, I can only find the chocolate ones and the ones that taste like Jolly Ranchers, and I don't like either of those. I'm a classic.
Yeah.
Oh, so how do you feel?
You understand the question?
I have to make double major. My friend that does.
It means like there's not enough. People don't know about Like you study psychology.
I want to be able to have the option. I still kind of like the idea
A lot of people study psychology,
but I want to be able to have the option. to do
but
it.
they don't talk about audio.
And you know, there's always, there's gotta be some sort of crossover. Practicing at a master's level is not a real possible. There's psych assistant jobs and stuff, so it's like,
Yeah.
to start. I
maybe
don't know.
bigger events on site. Or like more.
Their fee license positions, they have.
Michael gets phone calls that I had no idea that it even existed, so. Me, a general member of the public, had no idea
It
what
depends, they, like, give them maybe better marketing strategy.
And by marketing, like you.
Viral campaign, like a viral video campaign, I love that, that would be fun.
Twitter
Yeah.
posts going by.
It's an option. There's a lot
I'm
out
trying to
there.
think of like famous Iowa
Do
psychologists
you know what you're trying
that
to
the
specialize?
general public know.
So
But there aren't,
I'm honestly still open.
like, there are famous like Iowa psychologists,
But the more I do,
but
I've noticed
no
that
one
our
else knows.
system.
I guess the biggest name would be like
Learning
Brad.
has
you know,
generally
Grant,
Yeah, because he has a podcast.
right,
You
well,
know,
Maybe they learn that,
but
they like to.
have you heard that in Greece before?
System.
But you've heard of like,
Just automatic,
athletes,
like, oh,
I'm trying to think of like
They
non-athletes,
just learn different.
other fields, and talents, spokesperson, something like advocate.
Yeah.
It could be a celebrity endorsement. Who would be a good, okay, so if you can't include it,
What they're talking about.
I'm like trying to figure out.
there's not gonna grab a viral field. Like, so it could be a great.
I'm hearing some good discussion. I don't feel bad. It would be like, scared. It would be like, yeah, maybe.
That's fame, already.
Already.
So you're saying somebody who's not.
I don't have a fair
Yeah.
Just be like, hey.
I mean, the next controversy.
CEO,
Yeah, like all this gets a lot of.
our leadership is there with your people, right?
Like somehow he's always saying something.
Leadership.
Everybody either love it or hate
A million people will know what I was saying. Okay, problem solved. I think we got it.
We got Elon.
Oh, you're making sure we're behaving ourselves? We're not. Okay.
All right, you guys got about 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, what? What? Time goes by when you're having fun. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
So.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just a consumer.
Hey, friends.
What's up, friends?
Oh, we're 1 and 2. Yeah, that's great.
We're working on two right
Yeah, we're
now.
working on two.
We don't have an answer for one. If you have clues, that'd be.
Way of treating people with severe genetics. Oh, and you should definitely look into it. It's really, really interesting. Like most psychiatrists in the US are completely different on like dealing with schizophrenia,
Remember that she falls asleep?
I'll talk about it in another section, but I'll just want to read videos for a presentation on it.
I mean, it definitely has a
Okay, keep the cues going.
Maybe it's one of those communities that just like
Weren't they
comes
always
around.
put in like one of the companies that already kind of failing?
Yeah.
Personally, medication helps, right? Usually, I think most psychopathologies are a dysfunction of relationships. Think about it. The kid died of schizophrenia, bipolar.
It's hard reading upside down.
Right, okay. Or
You guys
trauma
sisters?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
comes via sin in the world, right? Like, in my opinion. But, I mean, and I've worked in a lot of like, I've had clients that are like shut-ins, agoraphobics, schizophrenics, bipolar personality disorder. Now it's dissociative identity, but. And so, but they all have that common theme, which is sympathy. I mean, it's not that simple, but
That's
there is something there that I feel like.
female CEO is being brought
we
on.
can
What
move
are
away
some
from this sort of like really business type of care.
things that get hair on the female CEO?
So normally, what the data showed previously is that they brought in during crisis, like different one-class offices.
But one class I always heard on the yesterday was that for schizophrenia, you have to have biological
And
antivirals.
to kind of elucidate the point in the book you just made.
And then I had another.
Women being brought on, typically brought on in
And then I had another
difficult
professor tell me that
harder
you don't need both.
So there
But
are more
I feel like
immediate
that
losses.
was like one thing that was very confused about, because like our section
Stock price.
Yeah, so
But over
the
the long run.
DSM really doesn't.
That's how I would.
Right at one point, currently,
Short-term
they do.
loss,
They
long-term.
can make diagnosis without both.
I know during the pandemic.
But for the most part, they do it for both, and biological.
And yet women have left the race.
That's what's happening right now, but that can change, like even since the dawn.
Put into that situation, love it.
Type of personality disorder.
Oh, in the top 500,
Yeah, the top 500,
I think so.
Disorder that.
Which considering there are 500 companies,
yeah, that's.
half the population is students.
We have a lot of.
The numbers don't add up, there's something wrong.
They're not.
Long-term profits or more business style is a Japanese way of running businesses.
Maybe they don't have.
Long-term, you might still have more
Sure. But I think the fundamental
So, I mean, it's kind of like,
corporation,
if.
that would have to change, right? Like being financially responsible for mistakes or reduce profits right now, right? That's the narrative.
It comes down to
No.
environment,
And that's why
exposure, those kind of things.
Where they're like, they're thinking 3 generations ahead, there's one company that's 40 generations. That would all turn one family.
Yeah.
The son probably comes, so that's the male son.
They were crazy. They, in that culture, they adopt
I feel like sometimes
Yeah.
when
to run the company. So you then get to pick. It's still the family, but it's technically an adopted child as a 40-year-old person.
It's pretty strict, there's not much flexibility.
I think it's
There's
fine.
even something for like history of family trauma. There's a post-traumatic stress disorder, which is after 6 months it qualifies for it, but we know history of family trauma is huge. There's not even a.
So you said you have 3 more courses? You have 3 more courses in IO? Really?
It just shows you
And
that.
Sarah as well, or is it? Oh, no way.
All right, team,
So
the
what do you have
CEO
next
needs the answer. We need our candy canes. What do we have?
Oh, we have number 1.
Number 2.
We have to go first.
Yeah, send up your representatives to consult with the CEO.
Oh, yeah, you got it.
Hi.
Oh, yeah, my handwriting is it. You're like, okay, you're right.
Next, program evaluation and organizational consulting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think Dr. Iverson took that. Yeah, that'd be
The
good.
next one is learning and on-the-job development.
Five,
559
Okay, so you have 559
and 579.
and 579. I think Dr. Iverson teaches 559 and Professor Murphy teaches 579. I think.
So we're doing program evaluation.
You're doing 2 next semester.
One every semester. I thought it was 4, but it's a total of 3.
Okay.
One every semester.
How fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm so glad I had this class.
You guys feeling pretty confident? Oh, you solved the candy cane problem?
I think we solved the candy cane problem.
Okay.
Best day of class. My favorite. Sarah, this is so fun.
I'm good.
This is a good one. I like it.
I was faced with the problem about doing myself.
Yeah,
I just got changed up completely.
You did
Throw
it.
out the script.
well done.
I don't even know how many times. I'm trying to, I try to show it down, but I actually, when I first came up with the idea, it was like a clue-based game where there's gonna be like weapons, or not weapons, but like a pen. I was like, oh, just needs to write a instruction or something and like hide it somewhere in the room. But my imagination got away with me and I realized I didn't have that much time, and so I was like, this will work.
I like it. Can you send it to me? Or did you submit like the documents of this?
I did, but I can't.
If you could, that'd be great. Because then next semester, I'll just do it myself. Because I don't think they'll have anyone to like come up with this themselves. I'll do it for them. You've done it for them. I'll say, hey, Sarah says you got to do this.
And if I ever try to be a professor here, I'm gonna be like, okay, Dr. Fuller, remember that thing I did?
Done.
I've got a great recommendation.
I'll be there for you.
So do I tell you that
Get all the answers and provide me a full solution. No, yeah, you guys can keep it souvenir. You can give it to me.
So I got a short-term memory.
Yeah, and then there is
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Give me a solution. And I do actually have a range of answers that I looked at based off of what our articles. I didn't pull anything out of there. So let's try that. There's 5, 6, 7, and 8. Wait, 7, just kidding.
My goodness.
The CEO is waiting on your meeting. I thought we were waiting. I thought we were waiting for them.
Yeah. Where's 5?
Or you prefer working?
5 and 6. Are they still working? I appreciate that. I thought we had to do it.
Does it matter if we approach in the right order, or is it just for?
It does, but you know what? Let's take our team and help 5 and 6 finish this out. They had, they lost some workers to COVID.
You're okay.
So they have to back them up on it. Which one did you get 5 yet?
I'm trying to remember everything people told me.
I know, the role of the CEO is hard. Yes, it's not easy. You get to do nothing until the very end.
And you have the most important and impactful decision to make.
Yeah, if all of their work means nothing if you can't communicate. I love that I can hear you like from a mile away.
She should have been like going through the parking lot. People were like, what the? I'm like, I have no shame. Yeah, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was like, I have no shame. I can't address myself. So. I wear flip flops in the snow. Like I am a flip flop girl. I will wear flip flops if it's
She'll fill it in.
like snowing or like that. I always wear flip flops. Like oh no, my feet will be freezing. I'm like, no, I'm not putting coat. I wear flats here because I have to. Because you can't wear flip flops. No, not barefoot red lips. Like for sure. Yeah. Like that. My friend Shannon moved from here to Boston, and she lived in Boston for like a decade. And like everybody makes fun of her because like she's the same way. Like it doesn't matter how cold it is, she's wearing flip flops. Like that's. I'm like yeah. Like I wear flip flops. I wear like yeah. Well, it's just raining your feet, right? Yeah.
And they get washed.
Yeah, they're not really washed. It's really nasty water, but yeah. It hasn't always worked out, but yeah, my husband says the same thing. Like I wear flip flops to concerts.
Hi. Yeah, no, I was hoping you'd come up with the envelope.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. This is a gift.
But
We found this food.
okay, so here's the thing.
Oh, man.
I have a good marketing idea for that sweater. Girls pants off to don't
So
have
the
it,
solution
right?
is working from
Like, you don't need
That's like.
Yeah, so like people working at home are seeing her and.
You should just hold all the walls.
I'm just kidding.
I probably put everything away on
So it's less likely to get promoted.
My dog's like,
My dog will probably sing with me.
oh, my dog, found a string and did this earlier today.
I'm just trying to. Yeah.
Yeah, that, no,
She's
we wrote
3
it down.
months old, so, you know.
There you go, there you go. Oh, I love that you're just taking this to like, oh yeah.
That's
We lost it. You know, like, I think it's like,
Do they celebrate Christmas Eve?
so, like, you just do it like while it's still warm.
You guys have very helpful.
She did like.
So, we are here to
Have you have a car? So now you have your license. Drive around.
And I didn't know that.
Oh, good, I'm glad that you like it. I make my own Italian seasoning. And then I just do white wine vinegar and. Yeah, I was getting ready to come down here, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having testing. I was like,
So have you ever seen like Christmas lights around?
Yeah.
Because I think that is basically automation.
Yeah. Have you been to the Mission
There you go. Okay, moment of truth, everybody. All of your hard work comes down to, did the CEO hear your message, and will she be able to deliver it to me, the consumer?
All right, do I just tell you all the solutions that they had?
You have to tell it to me in a plan. I'm a consumer. I don't understand all that
Okay.
nonsense.
All right, so let me put it together. Having a hybrid model, so that people can work from home and on site. But also make sure that they are seen and heard at home and on site so that people can work together and they are functioning as a whole. Okay, and then also adding automation with that to help produce more, but also incorporate people still working and making candy canes at the same time with automation so that there can be more production. Which one did you say? Did I say that right? Yeah, okay. I'm trying to remember like a couple more. Oh wait, oh yeah. Growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset and work on interpersonal relations. And the first group I already forgot because I'm so sorry.
I think it was
Some-
what IO psychologists do, right?
Oh yeah, because there's less information, so to provide more information about the issue. No, I did it wrong. Yeah.
All right, I would say that that's probably gonna solve the candy cane problem. What do you guys say?
Totally.
Sorry, I don't think I'm the best person for
No, you did great. All right, everyone give yourself a round of applause. Just unstructured, shout out what you noticed about the process of that exercise. Shout it out, don't raise your
Yeah, I
hand.
just really, you just said shit. I'm just so used to that. Working with teams help to find the answers. Like I know, like these guys were struggling with the oh wow, I can't even remember what it was between team and
Working group.
working groups. And I was like, oh, I did that presentation. I know exactly what you're talking about. So like it was a lot easier like when you were working in a team to kind of figure out that information or going to different departments, I guess I should say.
All right, anyone else?
I've seen what you teach.
There you go. Application of knowledge makes it sit in your brain better. Anyone else notice something? Go ahead.
We all have something.
You do. And that's something that I really was trying to make a point of by splitting it up. It's not always about being the star. It's about finding out what everyone knows to pull a collective effort. And you guys did it. And while the candy cane still don't exist in reality, I think in my heart I know there's candy. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Here you go. I'm jingling my way over.
Just kidding.
Wait, hold on. Wait. Oh my god. That sounds amazing. Oh my god.
Chad, can we figure out?
Are you go for it? I would.
Can you push the on button?
See what I
Use
do
your
right
technical skills there.
Yeah, that should turn on the back one.
I didn't have a choice.
If you push on.
Yeah.
I see that Dragon Ball t-shirt. Just kidding.
And there's no clicker.
There you go.
That's okay. I'll post
Oh, are you?
Oh yeah, I just want to make sure everybody got their phones and stuff. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna start. I'm doing a presentation on mental health diversity in the workplace. My name is Marina Ferreira. So for starters, I wanted to talk about my own personal experience with mental health. I've learned a lot about this through my friends that I've made throughout the years. I also did get permission to use this picture. I told them about the presentation. But my friends Jeremy and Emily both are bipolar. My friends Luna and Julie's are schizophrenic, and my friend Ty has borderline personality disorder. I've had so many conversations throughout the years about their mental health journey and wanted to figure out like a common issue. Sorry, next. Okay. And I've noticed that the common theme surrounding was isolation from society. I feel like our society right now has been very comfortable with the topics on anxiety and depression, but there's still a little bit of like a discomfort and taboo when it comes to the topic of severe mental health disorders. Okay, and so I wanted to talk about the city of Geel in Belgium. In the center of Geel lies a church dedicated to Saint Dymphna. She was believed to have the power to cure mental disorders, and she devoted to her life to serve the mentally disabled. And in this very unique community in Geel, Belgium, for over 700 years, Geel residents accept and care for those with severe mental disorders into their homes. They prefer to call them, instead of patients, rather guests and boarders. And these guests and boarders are, they see their psychiatrists to get evaluations and treatment, and then they are paired with a host family. And there are a lot of studies done in Geel specifically because of their very unique approach on handling mental health. And one of the main thing through all the observations is that treatment is no treatment at all. And I wanted to take this quote that I saw in the NPR report on Gale. To them, treating the insane meant to simply live with them, share their work, their distractions. So life in Gale. Residents of Gale have not only accepted the eccentric or disruptive behaviors of the boarders, but have come up with creative ways to help boarders and residents manage them. So this is a host family, and this is their guest. And one of the examples that I really liked to read about was this host family had a guest with schizophrenia. And there was a point where he was hallucinating lions a lot through the walls. And so they decided to take a very different approach. Instead of telling him that the lions weren't there, he would chase after the lions and chase them away. And this would kind of help him show that, just to help him understand that they know that those hallucinations are real to him, even though they are not real to them. It helped him actually overcome that, and his hallucinations got better throughout time. And their big philosophy in Gale is not to cure, but to care. So the community responds to those needs by providing social opportunities and meaningful work in the community. Health and wellness of these boarders are at an all-time high because of the integration into their communities. And they provide them with job opportunities and give them responsibilities and a sense of routine and life purpose. So how does this apply to IO, and what does this mean for us? So I feel like mental health is a very hot topic in our world right now, and hopefully it is progressing slowly more and more throughout time. And I feel like, because another point that my friends have told me is that in their jobs, my friend Emily especially, she feels when she's going through struggling through a manic episode or a depressive episode, she feels like very uncomfortable in her job, and feeling like she's not able to talk about it, not able to get time off. And it is very difficult for her, and I feel for her on that. So maybe if organizations embraced to show that their company can embrace all forms of diversity, and it can improve tolerance and acceptance, create a more comfortable environment, and it will give more opportunities and support to those who struggle with mental health disorders. And these are my references.
You had some.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I am just so moved by your presentation. I love how you started out with explaining to us your purpose and the people in your life that are motivating you to have this understanding and to promote education, to advocate for them and the world that they live in, and incorporating and helping us to understand what their experience is. And I've never heard of this community before, but I thought that was super interesting. And I'm curious to know, like, if there's, this is my own question, but what research has shown about outcomes for people for the boarders that are living in those communities, and how that personal interaction, in addition to their mental health treatment, affects the outcomes for their regarding the severity of their diagnosis. So that was very interesting, but I appreciated just the humanity that you just showed, just overall about these are my friends and this is their life, and so it's important to me and I want it to be important to other people.
Thank you.
I think that was wonderful. I had the benefit of obviously talking to you a little bit about it beforehand, but it felt almost like someone before decision makers advocating so genuinely, and I think anyone who would hear that would want to take your side on it. One thing that I was wanting more of is kind of almost like a production, an imagination of where could this go in organizations? Like, how would I see it? You showed that clever example of like chasing away the lions. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult in the workplace, but I feel like
we can maybe use that and go like see where we could go with it, just like step into your imagination a little. I think that's the other thing that I think could be added to it. It's really good.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you like for bringing that up because when I think of diversity, I always think of neurodiverse people as well. I feel like can also be included in those efforts because I have cousins that are neurodiverse, so I feel like the more we talk about it, the more effective.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciated a very different presentation on something that maybe none of us have heard before, in the sense of a particular city or a place in the world that understands mental health and all of the continuum of health differently. And it's a massive paradigm shift, like completely different, right? Instead of a diagnostic, almost sanitized hospitalization, type system, they do it differently. And I think it's interesting, at the very least, worthy of exploration and collecting data and trying to understand what are the ramifications, right? What are the health outcomes for these individuals? Do they live more productive, happier lives that they would choose? I think an interesting question as you're giving this presentation would be to ask your audience, which would you choose? Which life would you choose if you had a mental illness? Would you want to live here where you're respected and given opportunities to utilize your skills and abilities, or institutionalized, heavily medicated, ostracized, and put off in some, some wing of a hospital, right? That's an extreme. And I'm not saying that's what we do here. I'm just saying that has happened here in other parts of the world. And so if I think it's such a powerful question to ask, you don't even have to give the context of the American system or any other Western system of it. Just say, here's an alternative to how we do it. If you had a mental illness, where would you want to be? I don't know about the room, but I would if I had I'm going there.
Yeah.
I'm going there.
Yeah.
Because it just seems so much more desirable. And if that's truly the case, I think that's a really compelling argument, right? You make it so personal in that way. And you made it very personal, with your friends, and a picture of them and saying hey, this is affecting my life and maybe all of us here. So I really appreciated that. I thought it was quite unique.
Thank you. I do know that they did it's like a 10-year-long study. Oh, you found it? Yeah, they did a 10-year-long study to try to figure out how they can incorporate here. I know a lot of psychiatrists here in Europe travel there a lot to try to figure out how they can bring that style here, but the study they never finished. It was inconclusive because it takes a lot for people to take in somebody they don't know.
Yeah.
And have to take care of them, their own child. Yeah. So it is a little difficult, but it's definitely beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
There's a colleague of mine here took a group of students to the Netherlands, to a community that does things very differently with Alzheimer's patients. And so they have a whole town dedicated to the care of people with Alzheimer's. And you don't have to carry any of your identification or payment, because people forget things. And so they'll go and eat at the restaurant, but everyone knows who that is, right? They know, okay, we know the people in our community that have Alzheimer's. And so we act accordingly. If they forget something or don't know who I am, it's okay. If they leave without paying, I'm not chasing them down because I know who they are and they didn't intentionally do this, right? It's a more a strategic awareness of just their current state, right? And it reminds me of this too, a more strategic awareness of people's mental state. I think there's something to that. I think it's great. So thank you. Thank you for that. Faked me out. It's like a little treat after your presentation, you gotta reward yourself. I don't know who brought green tea. I do. I just want water, but that's.
Where'd you get it?
Okay, I took a picture of it, like it's on a lot of them right here.
Yes. It was great. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, when I heard about it, I deep dove into it. I watched all the documentaries. That was so cool.
Yeah.
So it does happen. But they do have a psychiatric hospital there. So if it gets a little too much, they do take some.
$7. Oh, no, it's like, no, it's.
Yeah, it's interesting, like in the American system, that they've like started to change. Doctors have started to change like how they recommend handling mental health, and especially Alzheimer's. I'll be curious to see where we go.
Alright guys, good evening. So tonight I'm going to talk about my internship yet again, but I wouldn't do it if it wasn't interesting information that I wanted to share with you guys. So tonight's presentation is going to be on the DISC assessment and how it can improve teams. So what is DISC? DISC is a personality assessment. Basically, it gives you a profile of your individual working style, preferences, and the way that you interact with others in your workplace. This is helpful because it helps you understand how other teammates might have a different approach to working and how you guys can better understand each other and increase team productivity. So here's just a little diagram. Here are the 4 dimensions. So I know you might not be able to read it, so I'll say it out loud. The D stands for dominance, I stands for influence, S is steadiness, and C is conscientiousness. And here's just a little list of like the hallmark personality traits that go along with each style. So this is my DISC profile. I fall on the IS part of the spectrum. And basically that means that I have high levels of enthusiasm, working with people, and it's closer to the S quartile because I also value collaboration and empathy with other people and helping support them through work. So here's a little more in-depth diagram, and it shows the 3 priorities that I have. So enthusiasm, collaboration, and support. And then the DISC profile gives you a little, it's a whole summary on yourself. And so I just included my favorite parts. This one's about motivators and stressors. So it gives you a little summary of what motivates you to do your best job in the workplace and also things that are stressful. So some of my motivators are getting people involved, being around people who are lively and cheerful, and encouraging optimism in others. I think that's really characteristic of me. I love working in teams. I almost don't like working by myself. I prefer to bounce off ideas with other people, and that makes me happy, makes me excited to work together. Something that's stressful for me, the one that stands out the most, is being forceful or insistent with others, and also there's one about the being direct about your expectations. I feel like I tend to struggle with that a lot just because I never want to hurt anybody's feelings or come off as rude. So I thought that was a really nice summary of myself. And then here are the unexpected items. Another thing that the DISC does is give you things that, it's not an exact science, so there are certain things that maybe don't fall under your characteristics for the specific style, but it's still true to yourself because everybody's individual. So. Another thing that the DISC assessment gives you is how you interact with other people. So D style, they tend to be more direct and forward, which obviously doesn't mesh that well with my personal style. So it gives you a little summary of how you might come off to people with this style, or how those with that style come up to you, and it gives you tips on how to like interact with them and work better in teams together. So why is this beneficial? You may have heard of different learning styles like the kinesthetic or auditory or visual learners, and the way that is beneficial to teachers is to customize the approach a little bit and incorporate different methods where students can learn and feel more comfortable. So this is similar to the DISC assessment because it can lead to a customized approach within the workplace that improves team efficacy overall, and it boosts understanding and acceptance of everyone else around you. So practical applications, as you guys know, I work for a consulting firm, so that's the top one, kind of the business and HR, so that's applicable to different corporate work settings. It can also be used in higher education and the medical field and just personal growth overall. That's my reference. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, I've been taking a training course, so that's why it's not formally an APA, but that's the official place where the training is held. Thank you guys for listening.
Another place, and I'm glad you brought this up. I took the DISC last spring semester, and I love it. I'm trying to get my work to buy the handbooks for everyone so we can do it together. But I think it's really helpful. I'm glad I'm not doing that else.
I love that you not only like told us what it is, but you also showed what your results were. Like I felt like that was like a really like personal touch. So
I'm a C, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
We're close together, kind of.
I love it. That was so good. So I really like DISC. I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful alternative, not an alternative, a wonderful, validated, research-backed assessment for individuals, as opposed to something like, and if I offend anyone here, I'm really sorry, but like the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, any of that stuff, like, I'm sorry, it's not supported by data. So it's great. I love that people want to know like who they are. That's wonderful. And there's nothing wrong with the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs for that. But when we're talking about IO and when we're talking about hiring someone, if you hire someone based on the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, I think that should be illegal because it's not backed by data. It's not backed by science. It's just opinions and like personal development stuff, like how you're feeling. That's not why you hire someone. You hire someone to get the predictive. Selection is based on the whole premise is trying to predict those future job performance. That's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to hire your friend, even though people do that. That's not what you're supposed to do. That's not what IO selection is for.
How does is it the multiphasic, the MMPI?
Yeah.
How does that fall in with this?
It's a personality inventory. MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. That's definitely illegal. You cannot use that for selection because it's a personality test. Any personality test that you give that has any diagnostic ability whatsoever, you cannot use for selection because it's illegal to hire or not hire anyone based on their personality or not personality, their mental health.
Okay.
Personality you can assess for. Yes, diagnostically, if you give anything remotely similar to a diagnostic tool, and you can talk to your wonderful PsyD colleagues here about those, like that's illegal. You can't hire for those things. You can't include them. You can assess for personality, but diagnostically, anything that goes from personality to diagnostics of mental health or anything like that is a huge red flag. You're going to get sued. You lose a lot of money. Like you can't do that. So that's the difference. Like you can't do MMPI. Yeah. So DISC you can do.
Yeah.
DISC is great, and I think that's why I like it. It's because it's something that has more scientific basis and it has like a lot of support. So if you want to get a certification in something like DISC, go for it. I think it's great.
If you want to get a certification in Myers-Briggs,
Actually, at the consulting firm, we have one of our team members is doing MBTI, which is the Myers-Briggs, and then we have another one that's doing LPI, and another one is Burke 360.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
360s are great. 360 is awesome. DISC is awesome. They're great for selection. If you just want to do like coaching, like personal coaching, like almost like therapy, but kind of like, that's where I would say like the coolest thing is like, if you're trained to be a therapist and then you go into IO, you're like the best coach of all time. Like, and coaching is a huge profession that makes billions of dollars. Like coaching is huge. Yeah, like I'm serious though. Coaching is a big business. It's amazing. But then you could do MBTI. Then you could do that. But don't use it to like who you hire and don't hire. You can use it for like people that are already in your organization and you're trying to like coach them to understand people and how to relate to other people. That's a different thing than like who to hire. Right? Those are way different. Some things you do there don't cross over, right? So in that way, I'm not opposed to like a certification in MBTI. Just don't use it for like who to hire.
Definitely. No, we're using it for clients.
Yeah.
So we're planning on hosting workshops. We also do coaching sessions.
Exactly. I mean, it has a place, right? So very good. Thank you, Kat. This is so good. Appreciate it. If you can't tell, I feel pretty strongly about these things.
Oh,
Yeah, probably.
Oh, I have no idea. For the semester? Probably like the 23rd, 22nd. I don't know. Our grades are due on the 22nd, I think. Maybe before that. I don't know. I'm sure I'll get mine done this week. But that's typically when they close, like the week before.
I've got a lot of answers. What time is it now?
Yeah. Yeah. As far as like the offices, like the buildings themselves. Yeah, I don't know.
He reminded me that I have an MMPI in my possession. I need to turn.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I sounded like yellow. But
You're good?
turn on.
Yeah, there's a switch on.
Hello, everybody. My name is Danielle Fortick, and we're going to be talking about motivation. I have little motivational quotes on each of my slides in the corner if you want to feel motivated. So what is motivation? Motivation is a general desire or willingness of someone to do something. So moving on to human needs. The first human need is competence. This is effectively dealing with your environment. The next is autonomy, which is controlling the course of our lives. And then the relatedness is close relationship with our peers. Next, we're going to be talking about intrinsic versus extrinsic values. So intrinsic is learning new things, autonomy, being creative, something that's right that you value inside. Whereas extrinsic values can be examples of high pay, job security, and status. So intrinsic values can correlate to human needs, right? One of the human needs was autonomy. Intrinsic values, autonomy. And moving on to how that applies to IO. So I did some research, and there was a study done by the University or the London School of Economics, and they looked at 51 cases that reviewed the performance versus pay raise, right? So they were trying to see if when people get a pay raise, do they perform better? And it says, we find that financial incentives can result in a negative impact on overall performance. So meaning if there's a pay raise, then there's going to have a negative impact. So what does that mean? And that means that we need to, as IO psychologists, we thrive off of making a better work environment, right? Like that's what we want to do. So in order for IO psychologists, we need to find what intrinsic motivation that would motivate our employees. And we can also find a balance versus of intrinsic versus extrinsic, right? Because we all want more money, but that's not going to be the only motivator. So once we find a intrinsic motivator for our employees, this is going to better improve the organizational culture and then hopefully decrease turnover rate and just make a better overall experience. And then I'm going to end with this quote by Albert Einstein. It says, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Thank you.
One, I love your sweater.
Thank you.
Two, I cannot remember what your first one was like. How are you feeling on the level of confidence now?
I'm okay. I think it's because we're like casual right now, so I feel like I'm not as nervous.
Yeah.
But I also feel a little jittery. But I don't know if it's because like the million milligrams of caffeine I had today, or like
And
me just being here.
Caffeine rush.
Yes, exactly.
No, I mean, it felt very relaxed, which is good. I think the only thing is, and this is not even a complaint, it's the end of the semester, you sounded super tired. And so when
Yeah.
you're doing it on motivation, you're like, this is why
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Which, you know, it's nothing to apologize for. I get it. Been there, done that. But yeah, I really liked it.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
I really like the quote at the end. I always love like Einstein quotes or any philosophy quotes. So now I want to go do something. Like I'm gonna go do a couple flowers.
He's motivated.
Yeah.
I did think about you when I found that quote. I was like, Chad would be proud.
Yeah, I mean, you had STT, self-determination theory, which I love. I think it's a brilliant theory. Ryan and Desi are amazing. That work is continuing to grow. Like in the midst of, so they published in like, I don't know, 2009, 2008, something like that. So in the midst of the replication crisis, right? So like we have this huge replication crisis in psychology. Studies aren't replicating the classics, right? Massive studies that we have, culture and our society has hinged upon for decades. When we go to revisit those, they are not replicable. What I mean is like we tried to recreate the same thing and get the same findings and they weren't there. So it falls into question, were the initial findings really that persistent? Not that they're questioning what they found at the time. Like maybe, yes, they found this, fine. But given more elaborate techniques to analyze data, or our modern day of society and people and norms, or, you know, was it a fluke to get that significance the first time, just in data analysis? A lot of questions, and that's not the case with self-determination theory. Like thousands of studies, I think, at this point, continually demonstrate the credibility of these core components of motivation, right? Like what really drives people: autonomy, relatedness, competence. That's it, right? Those are major foundations for what motivates people. Now, it's still a very difficult thing to do, to actually motivate somebody. But if we can like understand the levers at play, then we might be able to use them. And that's what I love. This is, you'd think that we would, I mean, motivation is something as old as human beings. You'd think that there's something better than self-determination theory, and it's only like 15 years old. But that's some of the best research we have right now, because motivation's so hard to pin down, really difficult. So I love self-determination theory. I think it's great. I liked the quotes that you had. Einstein, of course, is great because he's funny and also very clever. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I thought it was a really compelling presentation. And I think if like with some examples or like with some like, here's how to move a lever, like a service component, like here's what you can do, an agency kind of thing, to demonstrate just one small little thing, right, that we can do to have an impact on our own motivation. I think would like just lend a little bit more like potency to your presentation, but I loved it. I thought it was really good. So great job. Thank you. Jeremy's not here, right? He's on the list, but not here? Okay. Okay.
Oh, did you say Jeremy?
Yeah.
I think you just put his name, that's a different conference.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you completed it on.
He did. He did. Just checking. If he like just flies through the door right now. Well, no, he's planning on it. I'm just trying to think about our time. We're still looking good. Yeah. We're doing so well. How do we do so well?
It's the food. It's
The food, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
I think she switched to virtual. Because it's also at the bottom.
Oh, is it?
Oh, no, you're at the bottom, but that's okay.
But I switched it. Because I use my virtual last week.
Yeah, that's great. No worries, no worries.
Yeah, Jeremy said he wanted to be here, but.
That's okay.
Chewed on that like 3 times.
Is it the one who? Yeah. I know. I don't want you guys to see it before I talk.
Okay, hi guys. So I was supposed to present on leadership during leadership week, and I had it on emotional intelligence and leadership, but I lost all my notes. So I had to change it. So I wanted to do something, something creative. I know you guys had appreciated it last week, so I thought about how I could do that. So I pulled in some personal interest as well. About sustainable leadership. So specifically how to achieve transformational change through United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs for short. So today I'm going to be talking about what is sustainability in terms of organizations, how to be a sustainable leader, what research has found, and how to advance the sustainable development goals. So what is sustainability? Sustainability in terms of organization are organizational activities that incorporate concerns of social and then environmental into your business operations, values, and vision. So things like this could be, prioritizing mental health, reducing paper waste, and providing livable wages for your employees. So in their article, but the reference is at the end. They found, they interviewed about a couple hundred leaders that were incorporating sustainability into their businesses. And they found that most of their behaviors can be coded into these 3 domains of leadership tasks. The first being setting direction, how did the companies bring up sustainability to their organization? So they weren't gonna be like, okay guys, so we're just gonna cut down on paper because it's good for the environment. They're like, no, we need to cut down on paper because this is how it's affecting the earth, and this is what's gonna happen if we don't fix it. So making sure you're creating that buy-in to get people to also invest as well. The second is creating alignment. So how is sustainability incorporated into your organization? Are you providing those livable wages? How are you incorporating it in the systems and processes? And then the third is maintaining commitment. So you get their buy-in, you're incorporating it into your organization. So how do you keep people on board? One of the ways they mentioned you can do this is by asking, their opinions of the stakeholders. See, how do you increase sustainability in the organization? So now that I've talked about sustainability and how to be a sustainable leader, where do you start? I recommend starting with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They were created in 2012, and in 2016 they were adopted by 193 countries. Essentially, they were created to meet the environmental, political, and social concerns of our world. And basically, the objective is to create a better world and better life for all in 2030. And there's a total of 17 goals ranging in different topics. So now that I provided you the goals, how do you work on these goals? So what I did, I did the homework for you. These are ways that you could do it on the individual level, and there's 4 levels of intensity. So there's stuff you can do from the couch, things you can do from home, things you can do from work. And then this link will take you to what your organization could do. It's a whole toolbox of different resources and PDFs, why it matters, how to present it to stakeholders and stuff like that. So I'll just leave it a little bit. I can also share this in the group chat. Okay. So I want to close with this final thought, stating that organizations are vital to creating sustainable and transformational change. The organization's role as a solution provider is key because organizations are primary players in economic development and have the financial resources, technological knowledge, and institutional capacity to implement sustainable solutions. Thank you. Yes.
First of all, beautiful slides. Thank you. Really well made. I also didn't know about the UN's development goals. That's really neat. I'll have to learn more about that. One thing I think I would have loved to see is if you had like printed out those QR codes so that you'd be like, okay, now here's your chance, and like have us do it, and then I'd turn to Deandra and be like, look what I found out. Like, giving that space for like actual interaction. Because I saw on the screen and I was like, should I pull out my phone? Should I not? No, like, you know what I'm saying? Which is like it's really cool that you included it in there. It's just like something I would have also loved to see. Still a really great presentation.
Because I know the first one, I was actually gonna print out the first one because it's kind of like a pamphlet PDF. I was gonna do it at work, but I got so caught up at work.
Yeah.
That was just the QR code.
Yeah, I mean, honestly though, even if you're like, okay, take a second to point at the screen, I mean, I think that could work too, probably.
Thank you. Yes.
I really like the flow of your presentation and how throughout every stage you kind of led into the next stage and explained why it was important. So like, for example, at the very beginning you had 3 points and then you explained what they were and then you led into the next 3 points. I thought that was really easy to follow and showed why it mattered. I also liked your setup in your organization. So it was really easy to read all of your slides and it was really clear and concise.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I thought it was really cool how this is completely new information to me. I've heard obviously about sustainability, but never in relation to leadership. So I thought that was really cool. And I could tell that you were really passionate about the topic. And you didn't use note cards this time, and it was so great. Like the flow of it, you knew everything, and you didn't get tripped up once. So I thought that was awesome. Thanks.
I would say you did get tripped up once. There's just one moment where you're trying to remember what the authors are for the paper, and then you almost question like in a couple hundred participants or like organizations. I thought if you say that with a little bit more conviction, that'd make it really strong.
Okay.
And you don't have to name the authors. If you can't think of them, don't say, I can't think of them, I'll find them at the end. Like, you don't have to say any of that. Just leave that part out. Just you could say like based on the research or in the article that I'm citing from or something, right? So just indicate this is coming from somewhere. We'll find out later. You don't have to give us the narrative in your head.
Okay.
Like, okay, I can't remember it now, but like those words don't need to be said. But the rest of it was so solidly under your command. You knew exactly what you're talking about. You knew what your next slide was going to be. You knew what the information was without having any notes or anything like that. So I thought that was really strong. Great job in that. I actually tried to do this at CBU for the organization. I had students write up a proposal, fill out all the templates and stuff. The difficulty, the only reason why we're not like currently affiliated with the UN is that we contacted the UN and asked them, because in their paperwork they say like you have to have some type of buy-in or approval, or like the signature on the paper has to be from the highest person in the organization, which I interpreted as my dean. The dean interpreted it as the provost, and the provost interpreted it as the president. The president interpreted that as the board of trustees. And so they didn't want the board of trustees to have to everyone sign off on this. Other than that, we would have been good. But just some of their wording was so like the highest person in your organization, which is the board of trustees, which is, you know, having to pitch this to them, they wouldn't allow us to do, just given the constraints of like how many, it was with an undergrad team. And so I'm curious, yeah, like they have a lot of organizations, lots of universities are on this sustainable plan, which I like a lot. I was really into it and wanted to pursue that. So I think it's worthy of like looking into, right? Like I have personal buy-in to this. The interesting thing is Quinn and Dalton, they're really approachable. Like I've you know exchanged some emails with them. They're wonderfully kind. So it's funny like how we think of like these figures as these like kind of, I don't know, different echelon of people or something. They're just normal people, right? That are really approachable, friendly, and nice, and very supportive. So I really liked my experience with the UN application process, even though it didn't end up culminating in a relationship there. But I thought it was really cool. So thank you for this. This is really interesting. Appreciate it. Good job. Is your current organization a member?
I don't think so,
Okay.
but that's what I was doing. It was really hard to get that like actual like affiliation to it.
Yeah.
So that's why I started looking into like how can leaders incorporate it without having to go through the whole process. Like
Yeah.
when I found that article, I thought it was like really interesting, like how you incorporate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so last minute, I was anticipating that there was gonna be more people here. So I'm gonna start with an activity. Well, my name is Tiffany Roberts and this is my presentation on enhancing group communication. But I'm gonna start with an activity. So can I have everyone stand up, please? And so basically what this activity is we are going to get in line by the month of your birthday, but no talking. So you can use any other form of communicating, but you cannot actually talk. So I'm gonna give you guys a few moments to try to do that. Okay, so we have January, February, May. Okay.
September. He's done very well. So.
You did it! Everyone can go sit
I'm the only gentleman.
So usually with this activity, you would go in order, not only by the month, but also the day. Obviously with time, we're not gonna do that, but you see, it is possible to communicate without verbally expressing it. So there are different forms of communication styles. So there is verbal, which obviously is talking. There's nonverbal, which we did use. There's visual and written. So with a combination of these styles, this is how the workplace is ran. Not everything is completely verbal. Not everything is nonverbal. Some things are written through an email. Some things are visual by using like a drawing board or something of the sort. So this is something that I found really interesting, and it's called the Johari window. So basically what this is showing is there are 4 quadrants. So there's known to self, not known to self, known to others, and unknown to others. So with known to self and known to others, this is your open spot. And you can get from this open to this unknown by self-discovery. And for getting to this open spot, you can also get to the blind spot, which is known to others but not known to self, by feedback. And to get to this open spot, to this hidden spot, this is by disclosure. So you're telling. So in an organization, it's not always putting everything on the table and telling everyone your life story. Sometimes you have to go and ask for feedback, or sometimes you have to just be receptive to receive the feedback. And often you also have to discover yourself in this process. So using all these forms of communication make it so that not only you are developing your communication styles, but so is your organization. So you might be thinking, Tiffany, how is this related to IO psychology? Well, as IO professionals, we can practice by active listening. So listening to who's coming to you with a problem and trying to develop it. We can also create a safe and open work environment. Also modeling good communication, practicing self and team development, team building activities. The short activity we did, it didn't take much time, but everyone was able to do it. And with that, even though we're all pretty close, there was a little bit of bonding. You're knowing something about one another. Next is allowing time for feedback. So just like this model shows, feedback does have impact. Not maybe the feedback is something you didn't know, which is your personal blind spot, but someone's pointing it out to you. And last is get to know who you work with. Know the people around you and grow as a team, and also grow with developing yourself. Here are my references, and thank you. Yes.
That was a good presentation. I really liked the activity, kept us engaged, and like you have really good energy when you present. So I really like it.
Thank you.
I really liked your presentation. I thought that whole graph and everything about like the unknown to yourself and how to figure everything out was super interesting.
Yes.
I liked it from the beginning. I walked in, watching y'all do it, but it was fun to watch it from the outside and see that communication happening. I really liked the transition from interactive to here's some information, here's what you can do about it. It felt very smooth and intentional, and I put a lot of thought into this. So
Thank you. Dr. Colbert.
Yeah, I loved it. I really like my September people. I thought that was great. That was so fun, right? And I think the activity was so pertinent to your topic. And you navigated, if we didn't understand, you navigated so well on connecting those dots for us. And it's really a great example of taking something that's so simple, right? Really simple, but articulating that and then re-articulating that to tell your audience, hey, I'm trying to tell you one thing, right? There's just one thing I'm trying to tell you, but I really want you to know. And I'm not just saying like, hey, we also speak non-verbally. End of presentation, right? That would be boring and not informative and not even convincing. But this was so much more than that, right? You demonstrated clearly there is something more than just what you can say because we took that element out. You can communicate quite a bit. And the benefits of doing it are felt, right? Like when you said, you know, you could have bonded with the people that you were next to or around. Like, yeah, I totally did. Anyone else? I was so happy to see someone else with the same number of fingers that they were holding up, right? I was like, my people, you know? Like, it's so silly, but at the same time, like, we're human beings, right? We're just human beings. And this happened for Sarah's game as well. As soon as you put me on a team, like, I'm only looking out for my team, right? The first thing we did is try and, like, talk to our own team and figure it out. We did not, the first thing we did was not go to all the other teams to figure out what everyone else was dealing with and take a general assessment of what all the work was. No, it's like my team. So this was a really good example of like, hey, your team, but it's in place with all these others. So it structurally like had a lot of elements that I think are really potent examples as well. And I liked the Johari window example. I hadn't heard of it before, but I've seen the knowns, the unknowns, to self and others. I think that's also something you could talk about that for days, and just how much hindrance and benefit each of those elements have. So I liked that. I thought it placed well in the juxtaposition of the things that you were talking about. So I really appreciated that. Really great presentation. Like you commanded the room so well, and you gave great information, great activity. Awesome job.
Thank you.
Well done. When you give such a great presentation, do you know? Like at the end, you're like, oh, I nailed that one. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I could. I'm very hard on myself. I feel like I could always do better. Like there's
Sure.
always improvement.
Sure.
So like,
But that one felt good.
it felt pretty good.
Good. Good. Oh, I'm so happy.
I have a question. We never got our feedback. Is it kind of like too late for now?
No, I got your email. Everyone did. So I'm so confused. You didn't? And the weird thing is, like, Google, like, used to. This is only recently. Like, on my, like, I have access to all the spreadsheets. So on my end, it's all there. But it's not there on your end. And then I scroll down, like I scrolled to the next stuff. It populates on mine, and then I believe you can see it. So it used to work seamlessly. That is not the case this semester. They changed something on the sheets end of it. I don't know what's going on. Because if I refresh it, it will then refresh for you. I think. At least it shows me that it does. I don't know why it doesn't automatically without me having to like go into each person's page and refresh the page. So weird.
All of my feedbacks.
You've seen it all.
It's all in one.
Yeah, exactly. It's all in one. That's how it's supposed to be.
It's not
Yeah.
separate.
Right.
We never got an email for feedback.
Okay.
Probably like not good feedback, so.
It's great feedback, I'm sure. I'll make sure you get it because I mean it's still constructive. It's been there, but I don't know maybe there's just an email that didn't get sent, or I don't know, something. Maybe it went to the wrong box, like a spam folder or something. I don't know. But yeah, I got your email. I was like, that's weird because I have it. Like I have your own page and your stuff. So I'll send it again.
That sounds like it's fine. It'll semester we're good.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carissa Sanchez, and today I will be talking about wellness programs at work. This specific program, I'm actually recently started participating in. They just asked me to be the co-president of our wellness program at work. So I'm really excited. So I want to definitely get your guys' input on it, and I will tell you about some of the struggles, what is a wellness program, and so forth. So but first I would like to start off by asking this, have you guys ever experienced a wellness program? No? Yes? Okay, I see one nod. Did you participate?
I was an organizer.
Okay, great, then I will be picking your brain. That's awesome. Now, did you find that the employees were participating in the wellness program and was it effective?
Not as much as we had hoped.
Okay.
But it also did depend on like what we were providing, like the event or like the information. If they were into it, there was a lot of participants. If it was something that they were like, don't really need that, or it's common knowledge, they wouldn't participate.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I will definitely be talking to you later on. So just for today's topic, I will be talking about what is a wellness program at work, the different types of a wellness program, and then I will follow up with the different dimensions and some of the benefits that are involved. So first off, what is a wellness program? It is to encourage employees to adapt and practice healthy lifestyles to improve their physical and mental well-being. I did mention that there was 3 different types of levels of a wellness program. So the first level is just to educate the employees on a specific topic. So that can be maybe sending emails out to your employees, a newsletter about a specific topic. It can be about finances. It could be about the benefit of meditating, working out, and so forth. Then level 2 takes it a different step to it and is to provide resources for the employees. Maybe there is a discount on gym memberships or classes employees can take to how to cope with stress and anxiety. Or we just did one not that long ago. It's a 6 to 8 weeks program on who can melt. So meaning who can lose the most weight in a short period of time. Then we did what is a level 3, which is sustaining employees' healthy lifestyle and balanced behaviors. So what that is when organizations have actually equipment at the facility. So maybe a working out gym there or a safe place where employees can go just to relax and maybe on their break or lunch and so forth. So there are multiple of programs that you can utilize. So these are just 3 simple examples. So for the first one is financial. So we can provide employees education on maybe how to save money for retirement or having different banks to come to the organization and how to save money or how to increase their credit score. Then the next step is social events. So we talked about earlier about social events outside of work. And then there is physical component as well, which is some of the challenges that I talked about, or maybe meditation or a workout Wednesday. So we're looking at that maybe through Zoom because of the pandemic. So there are a variety of different benefits that includes into wellness programs. So, and the benefit will vary depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to have the employees to work out more? Are you having them to, due to COVID, some stress reliever activities and so forth? So depending on what you're trying to accomplish will determine the benefits. So there's a variety of different benefits. So for an example, reduce stress, if we provide workshops on meditation or working out, that will reduce the stress. And as the employees continue to do that, it starts to develop healthy behaviors. There's actually a study that shows when organizations have an effective fitness program at work, it lowers absenteeism. And it increases productivity. So I thought that was very interesting that in the research did show that there was a decrease on that and an increase in productivity. So my question to you guys is, what wellness program would you like to see in your workplace that may benefit you or your employees? Yes.
So I work at like a student affairs office, and I think something we'd like to see is like a priority over our mental health. They always say it, but when it comes down to it, they're kind of like, oh, that's crazy. I like that. So following up on what they say was really great.
No, absolutely.
I actually have a question.
Yes.
So my job gives us $50 a month, for like any health things, like we can buy vitamins, they'll pay for our gym membership and all that stuff. Is that like a wellness program or is that just part of a benefit?
It depends on maybe the approach that they're trying to provide, but that does sound like almost a wellness program that they're providing for their employees.
Because our we manufacture like vitamins.
Yeah.
So just like they just give us $50 a month, but they never really like I just found out about this and I've been working for the company for a year.
Okay, that does sound like probably a
Other than
Mhm.
like a wellness program. Okay. Well then I guess like I would have like a creative wellness program for us to know about that.
Yeah, and the challenge that we are facing at work is that the employees that are, because I work for public transportation, so we have hundreds of bus drivers. So having them to participate in these programs is extremely difficult compared to people that are work from the office. So we have to find different programs that are going to be beneficial for both different types of employees. Yes.
I think something we can definitely talk about more later. So now that I was thinking about it, we provide wellness programs for our students. So we do a lot of student programming, and one of the programmatic areas is health and wellness, holistic wellness. So I do know, like how you said, the financial wellness. We work with Wells Fargo, and they will do workshops on debt management, checkings and savings, and just stuff like that. So I know you can contact Wells Fargo, and then it kind of depends on how much time you have with both the bus drivers and the office workers. One thing you can do is called passive programming. So you kind of give them the information and they take a look at it at their own time frame. I think that would be very beneficial because I know bus drivers their schedules can be crazy. So we have a board and we kind of just put the information, some activities they can do without our facilitation.
Mm-hmm.
So they can just pass by and look over it as students walk in and out.
Well, thank you guys so much for your participation in that and your feedback. So there was just this quote that, to conclude my presentation, I found this quote by Tom Rath, and it says, "Well-being is about the combination on our love for what we do each day, the quality of our relationship, and the security of our finances, the vibrancy of the physical health, and the pride we take in what we contribute to the community." So thank you guys so much for. Yes.
I think it's very relevant that you're focusing on well-being and stress because turnover is so high and burnout so high. So this is something that can really benefit your organization, keep people or work on retention and just the overall health of the employees is commendable.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a research on that, but they didn't finish the research on it. How to measure it, so because they did want to measure based off of if there was a lower turnover rate. But I'd be curious to know in a few years from now to see if there was a decrease on it. So. Yes.
I would say, in addition to the kind of the programming that you're talking about, a big part of it too is the culture in the organization. Just the concept that people are welcome to be doing these things that are other than sitting chained to their desk all day, or managers aren't wondering where were you that whole 5 minutes that you were away from your desk, that sort of thing. So if everybody knows that there is that space and that time to do something as simple as getting up and going for a walk around the parking lot, even if they're not in a formal program, a wellness program, they're still doing something, and the organization is still communicating that, yeah, we want you to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
still think it's very relevant and, thinking about like wellness programs and the short time in my life I decided to work for Amazon and like the free boots that they gave and stuff like that. I realize how necessary it is, so I appreciate that you're kind of like, we need to solve this real world problem. I don't know if this is something you actually looked up, but I'm curious if there's anything on like mandatory wellness. Does that make sense? Like, you know, bosses being like, you need to participate in this wellness and how that impacts like the delivery of it. I don't know if you ran across that at all.
No, I didn't run across on research on that, but I think that the first step is to get the leaders involved and let them know the importance of it and have them promote through, you know, the benefits of the wellness program. So, but I didn't see specific on the topic. I know.
I feel like that's like the biggest gap there. It's like people want wellness, right? And
Yeah,
leaders
exactly.
want them to want wellness, but there's something in between my leader telling me be well, and I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. There's about 370 employees and only about 5 people participate. So we're trying to increase the participation rate. So I'm like, okay, what can we do? How can we increase this? So it's a lot of planning involved.
I feel this was it's great. It's really complicated in terms of execution because you have competing interests.
Mhm.
And that's I think what we're talking about here. And if you're being told, hey, we care about wellness, by the way, I need you to work 60 hours this week. What does that really communicate? Like that does not support the notion of like, hey, we really care about your wellness. It's just lip service. And any employee knows the incentive structure, right, is there to support work, right, not wellness. Unless the incentive structure changes.
Yeah.
And that's where I think wellness programs can really come to thrive and really come to fruition, is if you change the incentives, you will change behavior. If the company wants to incentivize wellness, whether, and you could do it in a variety of ways. Like money is not the only one. That's the quickest one we think of. It's just not the most effective. Something I thought of, and this is just very, when you ask like, what do you want in your organization? I thought like, well, I miss the ability to, and maybe this is just being today. I miss the ability to be on a team with people and do something fun. So I would love faculty intramural, like whatever. It could be broom ball. I don't care what the sport is. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like I would love to be on a team with faculty I don't know, because there are hundreds of faculty here that I do not know. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
If we had an intramural Thursdays every day, every week, you're competing just for fun. I think it would create an entirely different dynamic here at CU.
Yeah.
And it'd be amazing. I think it'd be really, really fun. Not everyone would participate. That's fine. But according to my own interests, because you asked me, like your slide, what do you want? Well, that's what I want. I don't know if bus drivers want that. I don't know if students want that. I don't know what like people want. But I think the first step in finding out would be to ask.
Yeah.
Like what do you want? And I don't know if they have a clear understanding of what the potentials are. And so giving some parameters or even like some, it's really hard.
No, it is.
Because I don't know, like I'm stumbling here because I don't know whether to like list out 20 things because we'd have to get that right.
Yeah.
Or to say, here's the context that we're talking about. Could you write in here and then you do some qualitative analysis to assess like what was the most frequently occurring theme in this, 200, 300 employee survey to try and figure out like what do they really want?
Yeah.
And it might not be $50 for a gym membership or vitamins. It may be something totally different that you didn't think of, like a chess tournament.
Yeah.
Okay, so the internet, the global chess tournament is happening right now. I don't know if anyone's paying attention to that. Magnus Carlsen is still like the greatest chess champion of all time. Okay, so anyways, That's what I'm saying. We should know about this because it's relevant. So we don't know. We don't know. Like, what's the big popular thing for the people that do that? I know one of my favorite people that I used to rock climb a lot, and one of my members at the gym was a bus driver, and he was like a phenomenal rock climber. He was ripped, and I thought, this is the most ripped bus driver I've ever seen. Like he was.
My image is completely
Yeah, like he like defied like the norm there, I guess. But one day I was like, I had to jump on the bus, and he was my bus driver. I was thrilled. I was like, he's like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest day ever. It was so fun to see him in his element. But I don't know what their life is like. I don't know what they want. So what I say I want doesn't mean that's what they want for a wellness program. And I think really trying to understand what that is a really important step in that process, because I think we often so many times in these types of endeavors, they don't have any teeth, right? They don't have any follow through because one, they miss the mark, and two, they're not incentivized properly. So I would be in the same boat. Like I'm not going to show up for a wellness program if it doesn't like resonate for me.
Yeah, I think right now what they're doing right now is having a game during lunchtime. And I'm like,
if that's what they want,
forget to go.
Yeah, if that's what they want to do.
To join. And the wellness committee is right next to me, so I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Bus drivers that there's hardly any communication with. So.
Well, do they all have lunch at the same time?
No, we don't.
Yeah.
So,
what are we doing?
Yeah. So there's a lot of work to do.
I don't know how much time this is taking out on this thing would be, but just going off of what Dr. Fuller said, you can maybe like create like surveys and like send them out and be like, hey, this is, or like just say like, would you rather do this or this, and just have them take something,
yeah,
and then just kind of go off the data back. Because like I was thinking like, oh, it'd be cool to have like readings, like a book club, or where we could be at a bus stop and like talk about the book or something. Like I feel like that would be kind of cool, or just like going off the news ideas. I don't know. I mean, that's a good idea.
Awesome. Yeah.
Going off of that, we actually did surveys for our wellness program, and something that all the employees like agreed on was a walkathon, and they loved it. And that was like the most participation we've had in an event. So just an idea, throwing out a walkathon.
All right.
They did like a few things. They did like did raised money for charity. They did like a bunch of things. I think we did we got donations. We're a K through 12 school, so we got donations, and if you participated in the walkathon, you got a pair of running shoes. And those
Sweet.
were donated. So like we had incentives.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Well, I think
that's great.
I think instead of like taking the walkathon's probably a great idea, but I would ask Tiffany for her survey before I ask for the walkathon details, right? In the sense that, right? What I'm saying is like you do the thing that they want to do and they show up, right? Like that's the thing, right? That's the important piece here. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. This is awesome. All right. Any other
Food
feedback?
always works.
Yes.
Free
Mhm.
lunch, I don't know, give me a month subscription to Go Fresh or whatever those things are called.
Yeah. And they have incentives if you participate. We do like the spin the wheel virtually, and I'm like, okay, you are receiving something, but they're not really advertising that either. So I'm like, okay, that's gonna be one. So we need, so there's a lot. I haven't started yet. It's gonna be in January, but
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm excited just overall. So yes.
I was gonna say that if someone was, I guess, picked for the wellness program, for example, they've been nominated or picked to get those supplements, you could probably put them on like let them speak of their experience, and then letting them, them talking to the people that makes them more interested in the program.
Awesome. Anything else?
Good luck.
Huh?
Good luck.
Thank you. I'll keep you guys updated.
Mhm. Yeah, let's know. Great job.
Thank you.
I like your Wu-Tang sweater. It's really cool.
I bought this album when it came out, Killer Bees.
Wow. Were you 5?
I started listening to rap when I was really young. I was not 5, but
Yeah, that's. I mean,
I'm
Wu-Tang's
pretty
old.
old though.
That's great.
Would you like to?
I'm curious. This would be a fun game. We don't have to do it right now. But like the first music you purchased. Yes. Can't go wrong with that. Solid choice.
That's a very interesting one. I was at the mall. I was probably in high school, and then there was this guy handing out albums at the mall, and he just gave it to me, and I got his I don't know album, I guess, and then he asked me for like $3, and then I'm like, I turned on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I guess that's my first.
Random dude on the mall.
Random.
Turned out to be MC Hammer, but you know.
I've never really since.
It's awesome.
But it was interesting. Yeah, that's my experience.
I didn't want to take away. I was just trying to fill the in-between time. That's a great question. I don't remember. Who sang "I Shot the Sheriff"? Bob Marley.
And I think, didn't Eric Clapton do one also?
Okay, it wasn't Clapton. It must have been Marley. That was my first. I don't think anyone would recognize me in my younger days. Like I look so different than what I do now. It's embarrassing, like how different I was. Absolutely not. No.
Just for like 1 second. And then
I want your respect for a little bit longer.
Just like put it like in a PowerPoint presentation. Like don't even take just like like skip through.
I could do it subliminally for like a tenth of a second or something and see if anyone picks it up. Okay, be looking for it.
You'll keep me in the entire semester.
Yeah. I will post something in a PowerPoint. Oh, it's going to be in statistics, so we're really going to need this. So I will put it in there somewhere. It'll be very fast, so you'll have to, don't blink. It'll be good. Oh, I love that idea. Put it on the old back burner. The slides are all posted, so but they don't have my picture in them yet, so I'll have to edit one of them. Yeah.
We'll get a notification like Dr. Moore edited this.
Oh no!
Oh my God.
No! Oh man, I'm gonna have to hide. I don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it out.
Notorious B.I.G. Life After Death.
Oh, that's a good one. So do we need a special what? No, just a computer
Another good album.
and a big
It's a
brain.
double album, right? Yeah.
SPSS.
I use R and not my friend.
Oh, ours great.
Oh, yeah, my friend.
No, ours no one's friend.
The
No.
amount of error messages.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel your pain. I tried to use R for my doctoral degree. It was horrible.
I can handle
You can work with that. All right, good. We're in good shape then. You'll be all right.
How's everyone doing?
Great. Woo!
You ready for vacation or what?
Never. I mean, yes.
So tonight we're going to talk about lessons from history for IO psychology. I'm Chad. So a little overview. So why history? Why does it matter? We're going to talk about Mansa Musa, very wealthy person. Congo Gumi, so lesson in longevity, and then let me see if I can pronounce this right. Shiniset. Okay, so why study history and why apply it to IO? Well, it gives us an opportunity to analyze an industry operating under different conditions than contemporary ones, so you can compare and contrast. It broadens the pool of examples we have to choose from, so we don't just have to take samples from today, we can look at the past. Markets have been around for thousands of years. So historical markets offer documentary evidence which reveals strategies, costs, and perception. So if you were like the East India Trade Company and they had their Dutch rivals and they would, they had correspondence, they had receipts and you could compare those documents to each other, what they thought about, how they would compete, etc. So here's a lesson we can learn from history that applies today to the market. So Mansa Musa is like the king of Mali, which is kind of like, it's in Africa, it's like right there. He's considered the richest person to have ever lived, roughly like $440 billion worth. And he had a lot of gold. If you ever heard the tombs of Timbuktu, that's him. He's the guy that made that happen. Established Timbuktu as a center of Islamic learning. And he made a pilgrimage in 1392 to Mecca. So he traveled all the way across the continent to Saudi Arabia, which is where Mecca is. Do that. So the lesson that he learned here is on his pilgrimage to Mecca, he was so wealthy that he thought it would be a great idea to just hand out gold. So he went around giving people everywhere he went. By the time he made it to Mecca, he had destabilized the entire monetary system in Northern Africa, and the gold was worth hardly anything. Like it literally destroyed the economy of Northern Africa. So on his way for about a decade, even after. So inflation's been a thing for a while. And on the way back, he had to take all the gold back from everyone that he gave it to restabilize the market. So this is one of the first lessons in rapid inflation. Maybe we shouldn't just print money. Just putting that out there. So another lesson in history is longevity. We heard about sustainability today. Congo Gumi, which is the longest operating corporation to ever exist, founded in 578, long before Mansa Musa made his pilgrimage. This company was building wooden structures. They built the first Buddhist temple in Japan, along with Osaka Temple or Osaka Castle. These are both incredibly famous buildings and some of the longest standing wood structures. In fact, the way that these were designed, we designed modern skyscrapers. This is a little fun fact. Modern skyscrapers are designed in a similar way to these towers here, in that they shift. So when you have an earthquake, there's a center mass that swings, and the whole building can shift and move with the ground. That's taken from a 1,500-year-old way of building. So in 2006, it was purchased, and it had 40 generations of family-run leadership within it. So what made this company last so long? These are things that we can apply to IO. Well, there's a name for it in Japanese culture, and it's shinase. So shinase is not necessarily an exact way of running a business or having a culture like we learned about Kaizen last time I spoke. This is more of a name given to companies that last over 100 years in Japan. There's over 30,000, last time I checked, I might be wrong, you check, 30,000 companies that fall into this. That is a lot of companies that have lasted over 100 years. So they did a study looking at what factors lead to the longevity of these companies. So there's an organizational and local cultural overlap. So they serve an immediate population. They're not these huge global companies. They're like a regional soccer team. You know, they really mesh with the culture and their people. They provide that specific region with goods and services. So maybe not having these huge global conglomerates that can, you know, when you have a shortage, it affects the whole world. You have these small, diffused companies taking care of smaller populations of people. So they're established, the values that they're established upon are continuous to the company. So if you can think of maybe Ford Motor Company, would be a shinase, right? So during the banking crisis, we were bailing out a lot of corporations. Well, Ford was against the bailouts and took no money. They took and they readjusted the way that they operate, so they didn't have to take any public loans. So that's kind of like having maybe established values, like of being capitalist. Some people would argue that taking those loans was anti-capitalist, but if you're a capitalist organization that's been claiming we're going to assume the risks, so they're going to assume the risks. They're going to adjust to the market when the market puts demands on them. So non-financial business goals, keeping a headquarters in a location. What was amazing about the company we just learned about is that even during World War I, during civil wars in Japan and unrest, they kept their headquarters located in the same place. They didn't move, like they had pictures of most of the Osaka being burnt down after World War II, and they still had their headquarters somehow like standing. They didn't leave. They still were there. So there's a lot of heritage, and it's a culture that's not derived from necessarily the people involved. It's the person who founds it and the local culture. It's a community that's based in an actual culture. So history, what does it have to do with me? Well, we just learned. Has a lot to do with us and the modern outcomes that we have. We can learn a lot from the past. And as Martin Luther King said, we are not makers of history, we are made by history. So just try to take the time to think back on how we've come to where we are today, and things that are not in our control, and think about how in the future we will have made other people or other cultures. Right? No flashcards.
Woo!
I like presenting. I hated it the first time, but now it's like, I can't wait till I go up there. Do better than last time. So any suggestions?
Well, I don't know if this is a suggestion. Maybe just because I love history, I think this is probably one of my favorite presentations in the entire class.
Oh, thank you.
I really
You're being
feel
too
like
nice.
I'm not really. Well, maybe, but no, this felt. I don't know. Like I wanted to know, like what I could. I'm not even a psychologist. I wanted to know what I could do to be like that company. Like the lesson of history was so powerful. You hold into something that is meaningful because as humans, we want to know what is sustainable, what's going to work for as many people for as long as possible, and what's going to help us stick to our values, our goals. And you found that all in such a simple package that was so powerful. I mean, I loved it.
Thank you.
To go off of that, I think that's really interesting. Something to think about as IO psychologists going forward, something that we could look at. I don't know if we looked at this before, if they're even planning on talking about this in any of our classes, but I feel like we look at a lot of research studies when we could also be looking at like successful businesses and what they've done and who's had like highest retention over like years and years and years, and seeing all these major companies like Ford or like companies that have been around for like 100 years, how have they kept their employees happy and how have they molded and changed to all the different political climates?
Yeah, and that was actually one of the sections I put up, and I forgot to talk about it, but the idea was to use this to build background so you could build hypotheses. Like this, we believe that this is what happened, so now you have an idea of what to research as opposed to throwing darts in the dark and hope, you look at what's working, you observe, predict, and then try to control afterwards. So that's a great point. Yeah, use this kind of information to build new hypotheses and new research.
I want to see the movie of Mansa Musa going and handing out the gold, and coming back and taking it all back.
Yeah. I think they probably wanted to like, take this, it's
exactly.
worth this. Like, yeah.
One question about the
money printer go burr.
Oh, sorry.
Money printer go burr, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. About the Japanese firms and the longevity. So my impression is that Japanese society over those hundreds of years has not changed as quickly as other societies, which I would imagine makes it easier for businesses to survive as well.
Yeah.
So is it possible in other societies to duplicate that kind of long-lasting company, or do we just have to expect they're going to rise and fall a lot faster?
Yeah, is it like chicken or the egg thing? Like, do you need to have a united culture that can get behind products, and the company knows the people that they're selling it to? And that's what I liked about having a regional, because Japan is pretty different from city to city, and they have a long history there. Another thing that was kind of interesting is like if you look at Japan too as a capitalist economy or a free market, let's try to avoid this, a free market economy, their unemployment rate is near zero, and they have some of the highest paying jobs and their purchasing power, which it has to do with inflation, is very high compared to other countries. So they have one of the lowest homeless rates in the world, and they're a free market system. So when you hear people say like homelessness is a product of capitalism or free market, we have to be careful because the evidence suggests otherwise. If you look at command economies, on average, they have like double the homeless rate that free markets have. If you want to even call anything free or command now, they're kind of all mixed and sharing economies. So that's a whole nother speech. Anything else?
So I like this so much. I would offer some alternative perspective and something to think about as you're using a historical, especially a very long historical foundation with so many companies that have lasted so long. One challenge there is maybe you're familiar with this. It's called survivorship bias, where
Only looking at success.
Yeah, where we only take the things and are paying attention to a particular element of success, like still being in existence.
Yes.
Like that, and we're only looking at that thing. We might miss, the real elements, or only pay attention to the things that we think are successful, when in fact that might not be the things, right?
Yeah. How many millions of corporations failed to make those 30,000 that have lasted 100 years?
Right, exactly. Or yeah, exactly. Like the elements of the businesses that have lasted so long. The example of survivorship bias that I think is really interesting is like the planes that came back in World War II and like were full of like bullet holes. So based on survivorship bias, you would think that planes should be shot a lot because those are the ones that make it back. And like, well, no. That's probably not a good idea, right? Or another one is example with helmets, right? As soon as they implemented helmets in the military, right? Like Mark was talking about in his presentation. So you have survivorship bias, like these things where the successful element that we identify isn't the thing, right? It's only the element that seems to be the case because they've lasted. But there's so many other things that maybe are more relevant. So it just made me think of that. Your presentation made me think of it because there's such a long-lasting history of successful businesses that have lasted over 100 years. If we only pay attention to those and we try and create a new business, I don't know if it would be successful. Right? I'm not convinced that it would be.
No, I'm not either. I'm sorry, but this is a good point. You can't just be like, no, I'm right. So we gotta test the hypothesis.
I love the idea though. I like the presentation, the idea so much that I would just want to offer, this idea as well. Because to be competitive now might not be what it was 100 years ago. Right? Like it's not the same environment. And so what was successful then, like what Ford does now is not what an organization could do now. Right? Like some hurting company that wouldn't take COVID money or something and would ultimately like go out of business. They can't say no.
Yeah. They're not in a position.
They don't have the same coffers. Yeah.
Exactly. To be able to make that
or name brand, right? Like Ford could go bankrupt. That's fine. They still have a name.
Yeah.
That's worth a lot.
But Chevy took the money.
Not a popular name. So it's one of those things where it's like there's in survivorship bias. I think it's just a fascinating principle. Definitely do. It's worth looking into. But awesome presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Woo. Nicely done. And you've all like made my day when you say things like I look forward to presentations now or the presentations aren't so bad anymore. Like my heart is like overwhelmed. Like just so sweet. I'd love to hear that. Thank you.
That's where I'm gonna shake that light. I'll have that break and then it will be again.
Well, I'll be sure to ask you to come back and speak to the incoming class before that break happens. Right? That's my hope. Like before there's any mental like degradation. I hope that you can come back and say, you know what, when I first gave my presentations, they were pretty hard and terrifying and I was stressed, but you know what, now it's totally fine. And I'm hoping to catch you right before, if there was going to be any type of mental breakdown before that happens, or long enough after for the repair.
I mean, I could have been mad about it, but.
She was driving my car to get, because there's something in her house. And I was in class, and then she just like called me crying.
Nicely done. Hard to navigate that screen. Well done.
Alright, so my name is Jesse Rodriguez and I'll be presenting about job satisfaction. Okay, so what made me interested in this topic was that I listened to a talk by Mike Rowe, and he mentioned that a few things that I wanted to look into to see if it's backed up by science. And the first thing that he said was don't follow your passion when you want to look for a job. And I found that interesting and I wanted to look into it. And pretty much what he said why not to follow your passion is because he says that passion isn't a goal. It's more of like a feeling. So if you want to develop passion at work, you have to bring it with you. So instead of chasing it, bring it with you to your job. So I found that interesting. I wanted to look into that. And then he also mentioned that meaningful work leads to happiness. So it's not going into a job that you're already passionate about where you'll be happy. Because you have to work hard. And when you work hard, you develop meaning, or your work becomes meaningful to you. And once your work becomes meaningful to you, that's when you become passionate, or that's when you become happy. And then he also talks about happiness and type of work are unrelated. So, one thing he said was that he made like thousands or thousands of interviews. And he interviewed like people who had like the most, like jobs that nobody wanted, like septic tanks cleaner. There was one dude that would like neuter goats and stuff. And he would like talk to them, and he said they were the happiest people. And so he told them like, how can they be so happy doing jobs that nobody wants to do? And they all said because they worked hard at it and they became passionate about it. Like the septic tank cleaner, he said, I work hard, so now other people's crap is my passion. And some key terms that I'm gonna be defining here, because when I was looking through the literature, these words had like 10 definitions each. So I wanted to select the best one that fit Mike Rowe's definition. And that one, for meaningful work, it's having a notable contribution to the greater good and being oriented towards growth and worthwhile purpose. So when you believe your work is purposeful and that it affects not only you, but the people around you, that's when you develop a meaningful work. And happiness, subjective well-being, so that's the basic definition of it. And then I was reading in literature that there's two types. Hedonic, I believe, which is positive affect, happiness, and pleasure. And then there's I can't say that word, but
Eudaimonic.
Eudaimonic, okay. Which is self-actualization, which is when someone believes like they find their meaning in life, they become happy. And I'm going to define passion as people's desire to engage and invest time and effort in activities that they value. And these activities are, and the values, they kind of represented as being self-identity. They identify with these values. And so Mike Rowe's first claim is meaningful work correlated with happiness. And the answer is yes, it is. When I was looking at the literature, it correlated with happiness, of life satisfaction. It increased organizational commitment, And it also, individuals were also less prone to long-term diseases. And the type of work matter. There wasn't too much research on this, but I did look at a meta-analysis that looked at type of work worldwide. And they concluded that the type of work doesn't really matter because they all produce difficult challenges that offer meaning and purpose to individuals. And so the type of work doesn't matter, but there are some types that do provide more life satisfaction than others. So should we follow our passion? And this one I couldn't really answer. I couldn't find the answer to, because I would look at studies and they will say that people who are passionate, they do live happier lives. They perform better and stuff like that. But I couldn't find like if their passion developed while on the job or if they brought their passions with them, like my rules suggested. So I would really love to find that out one day. And those are my references.
Like how you always incorporate research and you have a lot of psychology in there. I also like that when you don't know the answer to a question, you say that I couldn't find the answer, and then it makes all of us, at least for me, think about that. Like being willing to say I don't know is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
I do appreciate it.
I really like micros, so that was a good application. I think it's novel to get this like celebrity perspective and ask like, is this actually valid? And I think a lot of people look to him, so that kind of questioning is what professionals are meant to do. And help provide backed up guidance, unlike the Enneagram.
Yeah. It was good to see that he was right so far. I just want to know like the passion. That's the main thing.
Yeah, it's hard to measure, but good job.
Thank you. Yes.
You had a really good presentation. I really liked it. His talk that you listened to, was it from his podcast?
There was one on his podcast, and there was another one on a YouTube channel called Reason TV. It also came out on that one. And that one's more in depth.
Oh, that's one you listen to?
Yeah.
My dad listens to his podcast every week, and I get like a synopsis every week about what every episode was about. So I'm like, oh, I haven't heard about this one yet.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised.
This was great, Jesse. Really great job. I wish I would have seen more presentations, right? You're a great presenter. You have really good information, really thorough. I like your authenticity and candidness about like searching through, just like you're like curious, right? Like I appreciate like curiosity is I think one of the most like beautiful like elements of like the human condition. Right? Like the more curiosity someone has, the more I'm drawn to them. Like if you're just a curious person, it has so much benefit because you start with like a humble, like I'm curious because I don't know. It's an admitting of like I don't know something, right? Instead of pretending to like just know so much, you can feel comfortable enough to say I don't know. I want to know. I'm willing to ask questions, and that's great, right? That's a wonderful place to be in to gain information and knowledge, right? That's really wonderful. I liked the relatableness that you brought in with Mike Rao and the dirty jobs and like all the history he has with that. I thought that was fascinating. I think he he's a celebrity in a sense. Not in a sense, he very much is. And I think something that's really difficult to do is to say things that are carefully crafted, right? The words you use are like very important, and we know this like from a researcher's perspective, from an academic's perspective, words matter a lot. And I think the challenge here is when he says don't follow your passion, I agree with. Like I think it's going on the popular notion of what passion is considered to be, which is like you said, a feeling. And people say like, oh, I'm passionate about world hunger. Wonderful. Do you have any knowledge or experience of what that is or means or entails to resolve? No? Well, then it's not really a passion, right? It's just a thing or a feeling that you have. So we conflate this, right? Feelings are fluid and temporary. And so that's something I think an academic perspective or someone might pin down a little bit more concisely to say, what exactly are we considering a passion to be? How do we define that? Because if we're going to do research on it, we have to have something we can tangibly identify and assess and measure.
Yeah.
Because if we can't do that, then we can't have this conversation, right? If we don't have a common language that we speak, we can't communicate. So I appreciate, bringing him in and then trying to connect that to with data and research and all the literature about it, I think is wonderful, right? Like bridging that gap from pop culture, like little short phrases that like don't follow your passion. They're like BuzzFeed articles, right? Like, oh wow, that is such clickbait, like amazingness. It's captivating. It draws you in. But then to connect that to research and literature, if you could do that well, like that's a whole career right there, right? Like that's an amazing art form to be able to do. I think of people like Malcolm Gladwell, like wonderful writer, and his I think most profound gift is to connect common cultural language and norms of what we all think and feel to psychology. Like he's not a psychologist, but that's where he spends all of his time. Like he is in psychology, principles, theories, ideas all the time. And he takes what we commonly popular culture think and say and do, connects those to research and says, here's how that works, right? Like all of his books do that. Which, like I said, if you do that well, it's a career. Like he's a best-selling author and really amazing. So I love that you did that. I would encourage you to keep doing it. Because if you can develop a passion for that particular craft, I think you'll do really well because you're already very talented at it. Thank you, Jesse. Great job.